All right, please go ahead.
Thanks, Mo. And Andy and I got a chance to introduce ourselves briefly, but Mitch, would you like to say hello and introduce yourself?
Yeah, I'll keep it fast so we can focus on the breakout. But my name is Mitch Hendrick. I'm familiar with some of your names. I manage the Innovative Affordable Housing Strategies Grant Program, and I'm here to help the team today facilitate and take notes.
Thanks, Mitch. And Andy's going to share our slides.
And then should I go ahead and hit record now?
I think
I'm already recording.
Oh, Mo, you're doing it. Thank you.
Yes, sorry. I'm in charge of the recording in this room. I will be in this room with the three of you for the duration and anyone else that joins us, and I'll handle the recording.
Thank you. All right. Does that work okay? Can you see?
Almost.
Yes.
There we go. Thank you, Andy. So since we just presented a minute ago, hopefully this is all fresh in your mind. And these are the programs that will be grant funded through the Division of Local Government, as opposed to the other programs you heard, which are through Division of Housing. So I think, Andy, we could probably go to the second slide.
Well, and I thought I might just mention on this one. Oh, now I'm trying to get back to my notes. I think I just wanted to mention on this one, if there are comments about what's not listed in these bullets for what we should be funding, that we definitely want to know what you need that's not currently on this list. And then, yes, I'm happy to go to the next one.
Great. So we've talked about opportunities for engagement. We'll be developing the grant program guidelines for this planning grant program and the development of the fast track guidance. And we really want your input. So we're going to spend time in this session getting your input. On the fast track guidance, we'd like to have a team of both developers and local government planners from a variety of communities around the state, different, urban, rural resort, working with us and a consultant to learn from current successful local governments and develop some templates that local governments can customize. We know one size doesn't fit all around Colorado, so we really want to present several different options so that you can find the one that's going to work for your community. And we'll talk through things like defining a complete application, the start-stop clock approach, other streamlining tools that can help. And in terms of the technical assistance, we're looking into whether we can use other division funding to hire a consultant to help local governments work through this with some 101 technical assistance sessions, doing some deeper virtual work sessions for local governments that may be new to this. And even for those that have a long history of working on affordable housing and experience, we want to think through how this works with your current organizational structure and what support you need in establishing your baseline and your 3% commitments. So we're hoping that that would be happening in early summer. And then the first planning grants would be available after July 1st. Again, a small portion of funding for the current year, 2023, and then the subsequent year, that would be up to 5.8 million estimated. So with that, I just want to open it up. This is a conversation, like we're all in a room together. So please raise your hand. If you put something in the chat, one of my colleagues will flag it and we can just have a dialogue and get your questions answered and get your input as we develop these programs. I see Sandy. Please go ahead.
Hi, thanks for having this breakout. I was trying to remember, Mo had mentioned that when in this first round, you don't have to do the fast track. Like there's a time into the future when a community would need to implement that. Was that a year or 2 years out or even 3 years out?
Thank you so much for asking that question.
Okay, and then my second is there going to be any prioritization for communities that haven't, like really are at square one, basically with affordable housing? because it's not that much funding. And I'm just wondering if it might get swallowed up by people that are already in process. So I just had that question.
Those are both great questions. I'll take the first one, and then I think Mitch and Andy, maybe you could answer the second. The fast track does not begin until 2027. So you have a few years before you even have to worry about that. I'm sure many communities will be starting to look at how they can work on that. And many communities are already working on that just because they know affordable housing is so important, but not until 2027 do you have to have that in place.
Yeah, and I'll just add, really 2027 is correct. And I think, you would probably we'd want to get you ready to submit by November 1st with your commitment for the next 3 years. But we have time to work all that out, and we'll get you guidance hopefully before you get too far into your work, so that you have some clarity and some confidence. For your second question, I think, just to make sure I hear you right, you're concerned about communities that are already poised and ready and have a housing authority, and they've already in the rhythm of things. You're worried they're going to be poised to get all the grant money first, and there won't be anything left for anyone else. And I'll tell you, I think that issue has come up many times, and I don't want to speak for Mo, but I've heard Mo say that he's very aware of that issue. Mo, since you're on this in our panel, do you mind just chiming in with how you've responded to that question in the past?
Yeah, absolutely. We don't have an answer for that right now. It's definitely something we got to work through for sure. We have several more months before we're going to be rolling out any of these programs. And so we'll be engaging in further dialogue about how best to balance these things, and just more to follow. So right now we have not finalized, coming in even close to finalizing what these programs would look like. We still got to engage with local government, division local government further on this particular piece. And then, of course, the other breakout rooms are doing the same thing. So we're very much in information gathering mode right now. So any thoughts you guys have, any brilliant ideas that you guys have about how to thread the needle and make sure that, one entity or agency doesn't gobble up all the money, that would be good to hear. But keep in mind something important, because I think some people may not realize this. As I mentioned earlier in the presentation, these programs are all built on a local government making a commitment, applying a commitment application by the deadline, right? So let's start with November 1st, 2023 deadline as an example. If it does that, that jurisdiction, whether it be a municipality or a county for the unincorporated parts, is now made that area, that jurisdiction, eligible for Prop 123 funding. That does not mean that jurisdiction is the only entity eligible for those funds. A developer, a private developer, a nonprofit developer, depending on the programs, right? A housing authority, other entities could apply for those funds. And so that's the important piece one has to manage. I had a great discussion with Arapahoe County this morning and all its municipalities about this very issue. And they raised an interesting, great point, which is, well, we have to apply in order to unlock this, right? So in essence, they are the gatekeepers. So I would think through this process, there would be some coordination between the entity that turns the key and opens the door, right? And lets in everybody behind it as to how, at least for their jurisdiction, they would coordinate with all these entities on how much they might need, right? Now, we still need to figure out is how that then translates on our end, balancing all those needs against each other, I should say, or just as a whole, against how much money we actually have. Because the other important point from earlier, if you remember, is the first year, we're only getting half the money, right? And we're getting 40% of the full amount, right? So we're also balancing that as well. So there's a few variables we have to contend with as we work through this, but we are still very much at the early stages of building this. Once again, if you got some great ideas on how to thread that needle, we're all ears.
And the one other thing I would just add to Sandy's question about communities that are just getting started with affordable housing is that our office has been working with about 100 local governments over the past couple of years on planning grants to address affordable housing. And we know that some of you have been doing this work and others are very new to this. And we realize that different levels of support are needed. And so that's what we do. We're there to support communities at any stage of that process. I'm noticing some chats coming in, but we have a couple of other hands. And because we're recording this, Mo's emphasized that it's great for you to raise your hand and ask your question verbally, though we will try to get to the written chat comments and either respond in the chat or respond when we have a chance. But I'd like to next go to Jenna, who's had her hand up, and thank you to the others who are also have their hands up and patiently waiting. Jenna, go ahead.
Good afternoon, everyone, and thanks, Robin. Thanks all. I have a clarification question. So our city, for example, we currently have an affordable housing feasibility and planning document, but we conducted that study like 15 years ago. So it's just grossly outdated. So would funds qualify for that sort of planning document? To get that updated to guide our resources and how we're developing over the next 10 years.
Robin, do you want me to take a stab at that?
Yes, please, go ahead.
So, that's something we've been talking about. Thanks for posing the question, Jenna. And, I think we want to make sure and go back and look at it and talk to DOH staff, make sure we're all on the same page. But in my mind, if that data and planning helps you to create a stronger commitment, then that's kind of work we'd love to try to support. Or through, if you can get the commitment done, then with 123 local planning capacity money, we might be able to fund that as part of additional qualifying work, like developing your fast track process.
Okay.
So we've done some similar stuff with 1271, a different grant program, and I feel like we can draw some connections. But I invite you to reach out to Robin, Mitch, or I to really kind of nail down exactly what you need, and we can work out some kind of solution.
Okay, well, terrific. That helps a lot, and I will definitely be in touch. So thank you.
And maybe just to add that we have another program called Strong Communities that will have planning grants. And so depending on what you plan to pursue, that could also be a fit. So reach out and we can point you in the right direction. Steve Posey.
Okay, thank you, everybody, and good afternoon. I just wanted to try to understand a little better. I think it's great that there's going to be a lot of really, sounds like focused work on what it means for individual communities to develop this fast track process. And very much looking forward to the engagement around that and bringing in some of my colleagues here planning in Colorado Springs. Once we've kind of figured out that process, would this grant money then be available to like hire a staff person for implementation, or I guess just on that very basic level, if we want to make sure, for instance, that we've got one planner, who's dedicated to affordable housing and moving projects through the entitlement process according to, whatever that fast track looks like, is that an eligible use for these grant funds?
Yes, my understanding is that it is either hiring staff or consultants.
Okay, and just as kind of a follow-up to that, we've got a brand new entity that's forming outside of the city called the Pikes Peak Housing Network, and they would be not embedded in the city, but the city would be participating in that group with a kind of a bigger charge of tracking the community's efforts around meeting the commitment that we might make to meet that 3% year-over-year increase in inventory is helping pay for staff outside of the city, also potentially an eligible expense?
I'm not as sure about that. What, Andy, what's your take?
Yeah, Steve, I'm really glad you raised that because we hadn't thought of that yet. So
Yeah.
Our team will go back and discuss it and talk with Division of Housing, but I'll tell you honestly, my initial reaction is the way the statute is written, this fund is to support local planning review capacity, right? Development review process, not necessarily all the other work, but I think we just need to sit and think that through. So we may circle back with you and make sure that we really kind of understand the nuances and the different types of staff needs that will be available.
Yeah, that would be great. I mean, we certainly need stormwater engineers, we need planners, we need all the folks inside the city who could help make projects move through the entitlement process quickly. And if there's an opportunity to say, yeah, this is a Prop 123 position, because that's going to help the city, maintain this fast track process, that's great. But I am very curious about whether or not something could happen outside of the city as well.
Well, and I think it's important to note that these would be time limited, right? So this is to supplement maybe bringing someone on and ramping up capacity, but at some point the city would have to have a commitment to that individual as well.
Okay. And yeah, please reach out if you want to talk about that any further. I'd be happy to do that.
Yeah, thanks so much, Steve.
Okay.
Again, we're looking for your input on this, folks, so keep those ideas coming. All right, thanks. Michael, would you like to ask your question?
Yeah, I brought this question up during the baseline discussion, and I work with the 6 counties in Southeast Colorado a lot, and we had a discussion on our Council of Governments around baselines. A lot of our communities, and I'll use Crowley County as an example, Alney Springs, Crowley, and Ordway and Sugar City, they have a clerk on staff, and that is it. And to have the expectation that they're going to create baselines is not a realistic expectation of those small communities, especially really rural communities. And our commissioners were talking at our last meeting about whether or not at a county level, if they could do an IGA with their local governments to allow the county to take responsibility for establishing baselines. When you look at the initial projections for housing needs, we're talking one house in each community, especially these really small municipalities. And so we're hoping that this gets addressed through the baseline process, and then also through bringing in some planning dollars to create capacity to bring in consultants. And, I'm kind of selfishly speaking for myself, but, I certainly would love for other planners to come in and help me out in that region to create the capacity to do those baselines, because I certainly can't do it on my own. I think there's 26 or 28 municipalities out there. So we're really needing that kind of cooperation. The region has come together, and all 6 counties are working really cooperatively to address housing needs in that region. And we're also looking at a regional housing authority. But really, I think as it relates to 1, 2, 3, especially with the November 1st deadline, the capacity issue with needing planning dollars to help establish baselines, and also some work at the state level to allow us to work at a county level to do a baseline for the entire county. Because really, in essence, the other big issue will be that the funding availability to match and to do these types of projects aren't going to happen in Alney Springs. They're going to happen at the county level, with the county assisting the local government there. So that's my question. Sorry, I used almost all the time.
No, that's great. Thank you so much, Michael. It's a great question, and one that we anticipated. We're certainly hoping to see those kinds of collaborative approaches